quantify the issues, we can assess them, we can analyze them, we can have objective outcomes related to our problems. It represents a framework for improved coordination and control of activities, and it minimizes the effects of adverse conditions and changes. We are more able to respond to the external environmental changes so that we become more flexible, more conducive, and more adaptive according to the requirements of external forces. Another non-financial benefit is that it allows major decisions to better support established objectives. It allows more effective allocation of time and resources to identified opportunities. It allows fewer resources and less time to be devoted to correcting erroneous or ad hoc decisions. So these are all the benefits which are not in financial terms, but still organization is going to have a lot of benefit out of these opportunities when you are using strategic management concepts. It creates a framework for internal communication among personnel as well. So synchronization and patronization of the whole system is being done by strategic management. Now, there is a very important discussion that why some firms do not do strategic planning. Okay, like we can have an overview of different firms, particularly operating in local scenarios, and we can see that technically speaking, they don't formally do strategic planning. They don't document mission, vision, and objectives and strategies. So what are the reasons that they are not responding to this need of the R? The major reasons which are identified by the author are, first of all, lack of knowledge in strategic planning, which means that they just don't know how to do it. Second, poor reward structures. People would always question that what's in it for me, that why should I be participating and contributing my efforts towards making strategic plans. Another very important factor is that most of the local enterprises, they are running after firefighting, okay, which means that they are more reactive rather than proactive. Okay, so they just respond to the situations. They don't plan for what is coming next. Another important factor that why some firms do not do strategic planning, that is they think that it is wastage of time, whereas it is actually not. Some of the firms might be thinking that it's too expensive. Some of them are lazy enough not to do strategic planning. And obviously, one of the very important factors that why firms don't do strategic planning is that they're content with success. Okay, and perhaps this is the most important factor in our discussion, that they are content with success. So whatever they are earning, they feel as if that is enough for them, and they don't think in terms of development. They don't think in terms of upgradation. They don't think in terms of modernization. They don't think in terms of going global. So when they are content with their success, they feel as if it is sufficient for them. Another important reason that why some firms do no strategic planning, and that is fear of failure. And they're afraid of failure. They have never learned from the failures of their lives. So another problem can be overconfidence. It can be prior bad experience that they might have planned as like some time ago, but that plan might not have given them a fruitful outcome. So they thought that it is better to rely on intuition only. Remember that intuition only can only take you to a certain limit. Okay, you can never be able to develop more than a level and above. Another problem can be self-interest. Fear of the unknown, again, one of the major reasons, because uncertainty and complexities of the environment, they make them confused, and they become suffering from fear of the unknown. Honest difference of opinion, it would be difficult for the people to manage the conflict among different stakeholders. So remember that conflict itself is never bad. Rather, mismanagement of conflict is always bad. Okay, so honest difference of opinion, they would not be able to tackle the conflicts arising among different stakeholders. They would not be able to absorb the differences of opinion in terms of the alternatives, which are different strategic options, and eventually this would all result into their suspicious concerns. So there are certain pitfalls in strategic planning as well. We should be very much careful whenever we are doing strategic planning. We should not be, exposed to these pitfalls. The first pitfall, as mentioned by the author, is that using strategic planning to gain control over decisions and resources. So remember that strategic planning is never meant to gain control. Strategic planning is just to provide you a strategy and a plan. Not to gain control over decisions and resources. Okay, so another pitfall is that doing strategic planning only to satisfy accreditation or regulatory requirements. That is very unfortunate for the companies that they do strategic planning only for the documentation purpose only. Or if any regulatory body is asking them to do so, so they would also they would only fill the files with the data, but actually would not implement those procedures and steps in their organizations as such. For example, if the FBR is asking for documentations, or if you want to get yourself registered with the SECP, Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, so you go for documentations. If you are applying for ISO certifications, you do documentations, but otherwise organizations, they would not be following the procedures, processes and rules as per the law or as per the requirement. Another pitfall in strategic planning would be too hastily moving from mission development to strategy formulation. The direction is not clear to them. They are not exactly sure about their reason for existence and purpose of being, and yet they think that they are able to develop the strategy now. So that would be the wrong move. First of all, your reason for existence, your purpose of being, your own self-definition should be clear to you, and then gradually, in a systematic way, you develop a strategy. Another pitfall can be failing to communicate the plan to employees who continue working in the dark. Okay, so you don't share. You don't have shared vision, you don't have shared mission, you just impose your ideas on the people. Another problem can be top managers making many intuitive decisions that conflict with a formal plan. So when their intuition is hindering the analysis and the formalities of planning and implementations, so that would cause a big problem. Okay, and they themselves are not sure about the sources and or the logic of their intuitions. Okay. Actually, their whole intuition is only based upon their market experience. And if they are not having a vigilant eye on the changes coming in the market or in overall industry or in economic situations of a country, their intuition would not be able to, support them for long. So what they would do then, they would be hiring the people who would either provide them very costly consultations, or they would be working for them to make the strategies and to do the whole analysis thing. So managers' intuition should not be, in a compulsion for the people to follow. Another pitfall is the top managers not actively supporting the strategic planning process. Like they don't have the commitment to the formalities. They don't have the commitment to strategic thinking. Okay, they only rely on their own intuition. And even their successors suffer a lot because the elders' intuition is never documented, and yet it would not be transferred into the next generation. So failing to use plans as a standard for measuring performance. So you don't have any particularly defined performance measures, and you don't follow SOPs, you don't have any particular standards. So as a result, you would not be able to, get the fruitful results out of strategic planning. Remember another thing, that the commitment of the top managers is very much important. In case of knowledge management, we have two types of knowledge, that is tacit and explicit. Tacit knowledge is the type of knowledge which is in your heart, mind, and soul. Okay, tacit knowledge is a type of knowledge which is never documented. Tacit knowledge is a type of knowledge which is never formally communicated. Okay, whereas the explicit knowledge is something which is saved, which is preserved, which is documented. Okay, and which can be used by the people who need the outcome of that particular knowledge. Okay, so when people only carry tacit knowledge and they never turn it into explicit form, it would be very hard to preserve the important information, the important experience, the important exposure, the important thinking processes which are only in the minds of the people. The third pitfall in strategic planning is delegating planning to a planner rather than involving all managers, which means that you have just hired one consultant, and that consultant is only going to cost you a lot of money, whereas you are not involving the people who are actually there to work for you and who are actually there to implement the strategy. So without involving the people, just hiring a planner and asking him or her to make a plan for you, so that is a very disastrous thing in strategic planning. Another problem is failing to involve all employees in all phases of planning. And another problem can be failing to create a collaborative climate supportive of change. Okay, so you are not adaptive, you are not change oriented, you are not flexible, you are obviously would not be then creative and innovative. So that is going to cause a lot of pressure and problem for strategic planning. Now, there are certain guidelines for effective strategic management. The first guideline we have is that it should be a people process more than a paper process, which is very obvious. Unless and until you don't involve the people who are there to work for you, only things in the paper would not be sufficient to make your organization having higher performance, or make your organization having sustainability, or your organization would not be able to go for above average returns or long-term survival. The second guideline is it should be a learning process for all managers and employees. Then it should be words supported by numbers rather than numbers supported by words. There is a very famous quote that numbers can never tell the whole truth. So remember that only the numerical calculations would not be able to help you in every thick and thin. You need to have explanations, you need to have qualitative and quantitative analysis. So numbers and the explanations both should go side by side, hand in hand. It should be simple and non-routine. You have to, inculcate within your planning that you should be able to think out of the box. And if you're not thinking out of the box, you would not be getting a fruitful outcome. The fifth guideline is it should vary assignments, team memberships, meeting formats, and even the planning calendar. So you should be, upgrading yourself. You should be coming up with novel experiences. It should challenge the assumptions underlying the current corporate strategy. And that would only be done if the values are shared, if the mission vision is shared. It should welcome bad news. Because strategic management principles are no guarantee that you would always get the positive outcome every time. There can be unforeseen circumstances. Risk is always there in business. So you should be there to learn from your experiences. It should welcome open-mindedness and a spirit of inquiry and learning. Well, that is the most important thing, that unless and until you do not have the broader perspective, holistic views about the things, you would not be able to incorporate strategic principles. It should not be a bureaucratic mechanism, too much formal environment or culture is going to bring a lot of pressure on the people, so their creativity would be, diminishing. So bureaucratic mechanisms are not something which we can recommend. Then number 10 is, it should not become ritualistic, stilted, or orchestrated. Like it should not be just like following a ritual or formalities for the sake of formalities. There should be some proper prospects behind every move. It should not be too formal, predictable, or rigid. It should not contain jargon. It should be understandable by everybody. All the stakeholders should be able to equally understand your planning processes. It should not be a formal system for control, because it's strategic management, planning thing. It is not something which can be taken up as a control mechanism. It should not disregard qualitative information. It should not be controlled by technicians. All the people should be participating, and the people should not be crafty in your strategic planning processes. Do not pursue too many strategies at once. So that is very important. You should be following one strategy at a time, so that you could evaluate its outcome. And 17th guideline is continually strengthen the good ethics. In good ethics is good business policy, and that is very important. Ethical considerations are a must to be followed in strategic management principles. Now we are moving towards the book of The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And your author talks about comparing business and military strategy. It says a fundamental difference between military and business strategy is that business strategy is formulated, implemented, and evaluated with an assumption of competition, whereas military strategy is based on an assumption of conflict. So that is a major difference. Like when you talk about a war field, so there is a conflict occurring. And when you talk about competition, no doubt there is a conflict as well, but that conflict is of a little different nature. Like you don't have casualties as such in competition, but obviously when we use the terms like cutthroat competition or weapons of rivalry, so like that sounds like an environment of war. Okay, there is no doubt that in competition there might be a situation where there is a conflict of interest taking place, but again, generally speaking, the business environment is more about competition, that who is going to succeed and who is going to fail, whereas in conflict we say who is going to win and who is going to be defeated. Now, both business and military organizations must adapt to change and constantly improve to be successful, right? So let's have a little overview. Let's have a little overview about The Art of War, written by Sun Tzu. The main philosophy of Sun Tzu is that the purpose of war is peace. And this is something like a very interesting expression, that the purpose of war is peace. Okay. So let's elaborate that what does this statement means, that and how is it related with the business environment. So that's what we are going to talk about now. The philosophy which Sun Tzu preached was related to the fact that winning without conflict should be the rule. Okay, and in modern times we can use the same expression for blue ocean strategy. Okay, in blue ocean strategy, where you make your competition different, where you make your product and services different, where you differentiate yourself from the rest of the competitors, and you don't get in head-on collusion with what they are doing. Okay, for example, there is a tactic known as frontal assault. By frontal assault, we mean to say that you match P to P. Now, P2P matching means that supposedly your marketing mix is in direct association with the marketing mix of your competitor. Okay, the 4 P's, product, price, place, promotion, of your company are exactly the same as the product, price, place, promotion of your competitor. Or in case of services organizations, when you talk about 7 P's, so 7 P's in direct assault with the 7 P's of the competitor. So that would create what? That would create a red ocean. It would be talking about cutthroat competition. It would be talking about like severe strategic moves. Okay, whereas the philosophy of Sun Tzu was that winning without conflict. Differentiate yourself. The main idea behind this philosophy is differentiate yourself. So its philosophy has several aspects. For example, understanding strategic positions, that you should be able to comprehend your strategic position in the industry, collecting comparative information and recognizing opportunities. That is very important. That you should be there to get the competitive intelligence. Then automatically selecting moves that minimize losses and avoid dangerous situations. So you should be positioned in a way that your risk exposure should be minimum. Then instantly recognizing the specifics of the situations and the responses they require. And obviously, you can always do that only when you are aware about your surroundings and aware about your position. And then there is the E part, which says that getting the most out of each move and securing advantages. Okay, so you should be focusing upon your affordable loss. That is very important to understand, that you should be always there to know about your affordable loss. Okay, because unless and until you are not calculated, it would be very difficult for you to actually survive in the industry. Now, there are certain circumstances which assure victory from the philosophy of Sun Tzu. Let's have an overview of those. There are 5 points in which victory may be predicted. The first point is, he who knows when to fight and when not to fight will win. Now, this is a wonderful expression. Okay, he who knows when to fight, when not to fight will win. For example, when we apply it in the business context, into the business context, we are talking in terms of scheduling, that when to launch a product and when not to launch a product, right? Secondly, he who understands how to handle both superior and inferior forces will win. Okay, so you have to be very much, again, as I said earlier, you have to be calculated, and you have to understand that who are your stakeholders and how those stakeholders are associated with you. You should be able to understand the role of leadership, that you should be able to understand the role of followers. So that is how you should be able to win the war, not only in the war field, but also in the business world. The third step is he whose ranks are united in purpose will win, which obviously means what? That there should be sharing. Okay, and there should be collaboration, there should be participation, right? So when you work together, so that would create synergy for you. Then he who is well prepared and lies in wait for an enemy who is not well prepared will win. Okay, so that is again very important point. Very deep implication is carried by this sentence, that he who is well prepared and lies in wait, okay, for an enemy who is not well prepared will win. Okay, so just like a chessboard game, you have to be, playing different moves against your competitor. So you have to be always prepared and always having an eye that what your competitor is planning for. Then he whose generals are able and not interfered with by the sovereign will win. So obviously there should not be interference by anybody. You should be having the free thought process, free will to implement your strategic moves. But there is one thing I would like to add definitely, and that is that there should not be any compromise on the ethics. Now, there are 6 points that turns the art of war into action related to the business. The first is win all without fighting, which means capturing your market without destroying it. Okay, so you keep yourself in the same industry, you keep your product same, you keep your competition constant, but at the same time, you should be able to differentiate your tactics, you should be able to differentiate your processes, you should be able to differentiate your scheduling, you should be able to differentiate yourself. Okay. The second important thing is that avoid strength. We are talking in terms of competition. Avoid strengths, attack weakness, which means that in the competition, wherever the competitor is vulnerable, you have to be cautious about those points, and you should be having the advantage from the competitor's weaknesses. Okay, now those weaknesses can be the presence in any geographic area. Those weaknesses can be a product quality issue. That those weaknesses could be related to the service orientation. So you have to identify that what are the neglected areas of the competitor, so that you can have your strength in those particular areas. The third step is foreknowledge, which means maximizing the power of business intelligence, which means that you should be able to analyze the trends of the market, trends of the economy, trends of the socio-cultural changes, and you should be having the intelligence about the industry as well. What competitors are doing, what big enterprises are doing, what small enterprises are doing, so that at whatever level you are operating, you should be able to craft your own strategy in a better way. So speed and preparation is the next thing we need to talk about, which says that moving swiftly to overcome the competition. Okay, so you have to keep on striving for first mover advantage. You have to keep on striving for better outcomes. The fifth step is shaping the opponent, employing strategy to master the competition. And the sixth step is character-based leadership should always be there. And we can witness throughout the history that wherever there are leaders with their own examples, their followers would always get the maximum benefit. Their followers would always be reaching to their destinations and would be successful. There are certain lessons we learned from the whole discussion. Let's summarize some of those. The first lesson we can learn from the art of war is that clear objectives and mission of projects should be defined. You should always be calculated. Second, the first step is analysis, not planning. Okay, first you analyze the situation and then you start your planning, that what to do and what not to do. So success is profiting from winning. Okay, there are different attacks for different skills. Therefore, analyze the environment, understand it, and start action. That is very important, that we should be having different skill sets. We should be having different weapons of rivalry, so that we can be more adaptive in the changing environment. The heart of Sun Tzu's system is managing information. Okay, the people, you know, nowadays are playing with big data. They are calculating the algorithms of every move online. They're calculating the algorithms of every society. They are calculating of the moves of every segment of the target markets. So you should be able to, you know, manage the vast information nowadays available to everyone. Okay, and you should be knowing that how to prioritize the information and how to calculate its criticality. So managing information is important in order to conquer and to be successful. Yet there is another lesson that we can drive from the art of war, is time beyond our control, which means that we do not control trends over time. Okay, so industry, it is not that we control the industry. Actually, industry, you know, controls us. Okay, so time controls us. Thus, analyze and understand the environment, competitors, and customers, as they are important in order to know the latest trend and we should be continuously looking at these things. Otherwise, as we have discussed in the chapter, the example of Kodak or example of some other companies that they would, for example, Nokia, that they remained behind just because they were not as adaptive to the changes in the environment as they should be. Another lesson which is like very important for us is know yourself. Okay, know your opposition. So knowing is better than not knowing. So know yourself, know your opposition, and the environment within which interaction will occur. Okay, so the more you are aware about get aware about the environment, the more you get aware about your organization, it would be better for you to make or craft a strategy which is right strategy. Okay, there is a very famous quotation by the CEO of Hewlett Packard, and he once said that if only we could know what we know, we can double and triple our returns. Okay, so knowing is very important. Another factor is rely on your own preparations. Do not hope for success based on opposition not preparing. Okay, so one should be, self-sufficient, and one should be self-planned. Another important factor, which is very important, it says that at all times, and especially when strategies are in play, seek to keep all resources in profitable and advantageous positions. Okay, I repeat again, at all times, and especially when strategies are in play, seek to keep all resources in profitable and advantageous positions. Likewise, quickly liquidate unprofitable positions and minimize exposure to situations with inordinate risk to uncertain market movements. Okay, so these are all the lessons which we are learning from Sun Tzu's philosophy, Sun Tzu's knowledge. Second last point we have on the slide is that know your enemy and know yourself. And in 100 battles, you will never be defeated. Okay. Last but not the least point on the slide is that skillful leaders do not let a strategy inhibit creative counter movement. Okay. So we could see that most of the time what the ancient warfield knowledge was effective. It is equally effective these days in the business world. So